What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you guys with another episode of What's the Word, Dirty Bird, as we do every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This is season 3 of What's the Word, Dirty Bird. So we definitely are going to talk about free agency. A lot going on this week. The last 2 weeks with free agency dropping. So definitely a lot to talk about tonight. Some of the new free agents that the Falcons have signed. A lot of rumors out there of players that may currently may not have be signed with the Falcons yet, but players that are interested possibly with signing with the Falcons that we may be bringing in this week. So we're definitely going to talk about that tonight as well. And we also will be talking or doing Q&A as we always do pretty much every show. But with that being said, I hope each and every one of you guys are having a great week so far. A great Wednesday. Also, I do want to thank each and every one of you guys for helping me get to 2,000 subscribers. We did hit another milestone, so shout out to each and every one of you guys, fans of the show who constantly share out my content, constantly view my videos and hit that like and subscribe button. I really appreciate you guys for your continued support. But with that being said, I am going to jump in the chat and just say what's up to you guys who have already joined on this evening. So first off, Andrew G, what's going on, man? This is one of the members of my channel. I appreciate you joining as always. Joseph Thornton, what's good, man? I appreciate you joining me as well on this Wednesday night. ATL Leo, what's good, man? I appreciate you joining. Bubba Gump, what up, man? I appreciate you as well joining us tonight. Todrick Davis, what's going on, man? Eric Mack, what's going on, man? Said, what it do, fam? What's happening, bro? Nathan Floyd, what's going on, man? He said, what's going on, AFN? What's going on? Sonia Howell, what's going on? I appreciate you joining me tonight. I hope you're having a great week so far. Red Swarm said, what's good? What's going on, man? I appreciate you joining tonight as always. My boy Ultra Shadow says, Jew, what up? What's going on, man? I appreciate you joining as well. Big Ant, what's happening, man? He says, Juju 2K, what's going on, man? Hopefully I'll be Juju 3K soon, but shouts out to each and every one of you guys for the continued support. I appreciate it. That's one of my partners from AFN. What's happening, man? D. Coleman, what's up, man? He said, what is the word? Yeah, what's going on, man? And Ghost Peppers, what's going on? I appreciate you joining as well. So like I said, man, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. If you haven't already hit that like button, definitely hit that like button. That definitely helps get the channel, helps the algorithm. So definitely appreciate you guys for continuing to join, hitting that like button, that subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, definitely drop something in the chat. Let me know that if this is your first time, joining us for What's the Word Wednesdays. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. But we're going to go ahead and jump into some Atlanta Falcons news. You guys probably already seen this earlier. I did drop a video. This actually happened on yesterday with us bringing in or reinstating Eddie Goldman. He did sign with us last summer and decided to retire. And he was reinstated on yesterday. So he came out of retirement basically. I haven't had his press conference from my understanding just yet. So I'm not too sure. They did say he's been reinstated. So my assumption is that he's going to play this season with our Atlanta Falcons, which is huge for this Atlanta Falcons team. He did sign a 1-year deal last season. And from my understanding, he'll be still playing under that 1-year deal unless the Falcons decide to extend him. But I do think that this is a huge move for our Atlanta Falcons, adding more depth to this team. He's a guy about 6'3", 325 pounds. So he kind of is that guy I thought last season was going to be that guy that pairs up with Grady Jarrett on the inside of this interior of our defensive line. But this just gives us one other guy that can actually play on this defensive line and kind of build that rotation. You guys know I talk about having depth is important, especially on your defensive line and your offensive line in the trenches. You have to have guys that can play multiple positions, and you got to have guys bodies that you can kind of rotate in and out to keep those guys fresh. So I love the addition, us bringing back or reinstating Eddie Goldman. So hopefully he decides to play this year for us. He definitely, I think, will help this Atlanta Falcons team. He's only 29 years old, so he's kind of still like in the middle of his prime. And if he comes back in shape, I definitely think that he's a guy that can definitely help the Atlanta Falcons team. But if you didn't have a chance to check out my video, I did do a short video earlier today talking about Eddie Goldman and the impact he could have for this Atlanta Falcons team. But also, a couple hours ago, it also broke that the Atlanta Falcons has also brought back Jermaine Ifedi, who's basically a rotational piece for our offensive line. He plays right tackle. He can play both right guard and left guard. And he was the backup for Caleb McGarry last season. I don't believe he played in any games last season because Caleb McGarry stayed healthy for the most part last season, and he was extended this offseason as well. But we did bring him back on a one-year deal. So one more signing for this Atlanta Falcons team with us getting Jermaine Ifedi back in the fold as well. So I definitely think that Terry Fontenot in this front office is really doing a great job at bringing in guys to kind of fill some of the roles that we need on this team as far as role guys and glue guys to this team and adding that depth and bringing guys in that are familiar with the scheme and familiar with this coaching staff. But with that being said, I do want to also just jump right back into the chat because I know a couple people joined since we started here. So shouts out to Kenneth Lewis. He says, "What up, Jew? What's going on, man? I appreciate you joining." Jamarius, what's happening, man? He says, "Jew 2K." Yeah, I appreciate it. The Falcons therapist in the building. What's going on, Juan? I appreciate you joining tonight as well. And let's see here. And I think I said what's up to Red Swarm. He says, "Jew, I know you love to talk the trenches. Let's chop it up." Good, brother. Yeah, most definitely. We definitely going to talk about the trenches tonight. You guys know that I'm licking my chops right now, rubbing my hands together like Birdman. Yeah, I'm like excited about this Atlanta Falcons all season. And right now, Terry Fontenot is cooking with oil. So I definitely think that our team is doing some big things in free agency. And let's see, my boy Mad Mike in the building. He says, "Juju, I'm here. What's going on, man? I appreciate you joining as well." That's 1/3 of the heavy hitters. So shouts out to my boy Mad Mike. If you guys missed his live earlier, definitely go back and check that out. He was talking all things Atlanta Falcons, talking about some of the rumors that are out there, talking about Lamar Jackson, and also talking about the wide receiver D-Hop. There's rumors that the Falcons could be also looking at DeAndre Hopkins in free agency, so that's very interesting as well. Before we talk about D-Hop, I do want to get into basically the main thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, which is Terry Fontenot and the Falcons. Right now, that's front office, Terry Fontenot in the front office, Arthur Smith. These guys are playing chess, not checkers. And we've seen some big moves being made, some boss moves being made, as they say, real G's move in silence. Yeah, that's what the Falcons are doing in this offseason. I know a lot of you guys were upset, with the Lamar Jackson situation, with the Falcons not, going out and trading for Lamar Jackson or signing him to a huge contract. And the media has been telling us, that this has been a bad thing as far as the Falcons not going after Lamar Jackson. But personally, I think that Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot, they're executing their plan perfectly. And we're seeing that tonight, or seeing that in this free agency period, that Lamar Jackson, the reason why they didn't go after a player like Lamar Jackson, we're seeing this Atlanta Falcons organization, we're seeing them execute the plan of building the trenches, as I've been talking about since I've had my channel for, I believe now about 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 years. And pretty much since I've had my channel, I believe I started from either 2018 or 2019. I always talked about the game of football is won and lost in the trenches. And we're seeing that being executed by this Atlanta Falcons organization. If you guys haven't heard, I also dropped a video earlier talking about Calais Campbell, who's a guy that plays defensive tackle. And we're seeing this Atlanta Falcons team that the reason they didn't go after the reason they didn't go after Lamar Jackson is because they wanted to build the trenches, and we're seeing that being executed. And I'm loving what I'm seeing so far with this Atlanta Falcons organization, with us bringing in Calais Campbell, who's due to come in at some point. They're supposed to host him some point later this week. And I basically stated in our video that I really think that bringing in a player like a Calais Campbell could be like a checkmate type move for the Atlanta Falcons. We already seen them bring in David Onyemata. We seen them re-sign Chris Lindstrom. We seen them re-sign Caleb McGarry. And then now you're seeing them taking care of the defensive line. Last season, towards the end of the season, Grady Jarrett was really upset and basically stated that it's kind of like the same old stuff a different year. Like, how long have we been stating that we need pass rush? How long have we been stating that we need to be able to stop the run? But the Falcons really hadn't addressed the defensive line, hadn't addressed the offensive line. So with that being said, I do want to jump into the super chats because I'm seeing the super chats coming in as well. Then we'll talk a little bit more about the moves that's being made. So shouts out to Red Swan with the $4.99 super chat. He says, appreciate the expert analysis. I appreciate you with the super chat and appreciate you joining tonight as well. And shouts out to Ma Dukes. I appreciate that. That's my mom here with the $19.99 super chat. I appreciate y'all. Show my mom some love in the chat. I appreciate you joining me tonight as well. Appreciate the super chat as well and the support. But like I was stating, I really feel like the Falcons are making boss moves. I really think that we're seeing why they didn't want to spend $200+ million on that quarterback position when you have a Desmond Ridder who you drafted last season in the 3rd round, I believe it was, or the 2nd round. It was either 2nd or 3rd round. They went out and got Desmond Ridder. They're actually starting to build the infrastructure of this team, which I think is huge for this Atlanta Falcons team, that you can't win with just one player. And that's something that Mike was talking about earlier in his live. If you did join him in his live earlier when he was talking about Lamar Jackson, we talked a little bit about it last week in the Heavy Hitter show with Tom Brady. You guys know that I'm not a huge Tom Brady fan. I'm not a Tom Brady fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I did talk about last week. One thing that I respected about Tom Brady was when he was in the NFL, when he was with the Patriots, when he was with the Buccaneers, he understood that he never, required top dollar. He always took less. He never was the highest paid player in the league, highest paid quarterback at his position. He always allowed the New England Patriots and the Bill Belichick. He always took a shorter or a smaller deal to allow the team to go out and bring in guys to help him, whether it was Randy Moss, whether it was the Julian Edelmans and the guys that they brought in around him. And he also left money on the table so they could go out and bring in the Rodney Harrisons of the world, to bring in or re-sign the Willie McGinnises and the Mike Vrabels and the guys that they had on their team, the Ty Laws. He played with a lot of great defensive players and offensive players, the Rob Gronkowskis, because he took less money. He never took or required that top dollar. And I think that that's something that the Falcons are doing a good job of in this free agency. If you notice the moves that they're making, they're not taking or paying top dollar pretty much for any of these players, other than Bates that we brought in, Jesse Bates the third. Other than that safety that we paid top dollar to, we gave him like $60+ million for 4 years. We really haven't spent a lot of money in free agency when it comes to paying players. We're bringing in guys that fill a particular role, but they're not superstar players. And I kind of talked about this last week as well, that with this Falcons team, we're not seeing them go out and get the name brand type players that everybody know, like the Khalil Macks. We're not seeing them go out and sign those big names, the Jalen Ramseys, the players that pretty much any casual NFL player knows. They pretty much are going out there and getting guys that fit this scheme, understand what these coaches are looking for, and players that fit a certain type of mold, like a Matt Collins, who's a guy that's a bigger 6'4", 220, big wide receiver on a 1-year deal, not making a ton of money. I believe he signed for like a $2 million deal, but he's going to come in and possibly be your number 2 or number 3 receiver. rather than go out and sign a Robert Woods, or rather than go out and sign the kid that Alan Lazard from Green Bay that got $44 million from the Jets. I really think that they're doing a good job of being good stewards of the money that we have. So I really think that this can bode well for this Atlanta Falcons team on what they're doing. I really feel like Terry Fontenot is doing a great job of going out and getting players that are familiar with him and they're fit this organization. And I really feel like this Atlanta Falcons team has figured out what they want our identity to be, or the DNA to be for this team, which is physicality. So I definitely think that the Atlanta Falcons are doing a great job at the players that they brought in. And we still have money kind of on the table as well, where we still can go out and sign more players. The DeAndre Hopkins that's still out there, he could be a player that the Falcons decide to trade for. There's still some other moves that I think the Falcons can make, and guys that are still good, that's still out there in free agency. I've been seeing, you guys know, I want Rashaan Evans back from last year, who was our Mike linebacker. But right now, at this point, we kind of don't know if he's coming back. A lot of the fans have been commenting like on under my videos that Rashaan Evans possibly won't come back because, you know, he hasn't signed back with the team and it's been like 2 weeks. But really, I don't think that it's over for Rashaan Evans. I really think that they're giving him a chance to go out in the open market and see what his value is. But I could easily see him coming back to this Atlanta Falcons organization if he doesn't get a bigger contract elsewhere. I really think that they're just being respectful of him and kind of giving him a chance to go out there and see if he can get more money. But at the end of the day, I do think that Rashaan Evans still could be a player that comes back to this Atlanta Falcons team. But I do want to get you guys questions and also get you guys thoughts on the moves that's been made so far. Like, what grade would you give the Atlanta Falcons so far in free agency? Would you give them an A or B? Personally, I'll give them a solid B plus. I think so far they've done a great job. If they are able to sign Calais Campbell, which I said, if I'm the Falcons organization, it's no way when they get in that meeting room with Calais Campbell and his agent, if he, you know, when he comes to Flowery Branch, there's not no way that I'm not letting Calais Campbell get out of the building without getting him a contract, unless he's asking for astronomical dollars, which I don't see because he's a guy at 36 going on 37, if I'm not mistaken. I don't see him asking for top dollar. So I definitely think that the Falcons, there's a chance that the Falcons definitely should be able to land him. But with the money that we have, I definitely wouldn't allow Calais Campbell to leave Flowery Branch without a contract. I'm doing everything in my power to make sure this man signs with our team. Andrew G said I'll give them an A minus. I think that, yeah, I'll give them, if they sign Calais Campbell right now, it's a B plus for me, but I can see an A minus as well, because I really feel like they solidified the offensive line and they pretty much solidified the defensive line. If they can get Calais Campbell, I really feel like that could be a checkmate move, especially in the NFC South, because a lot of the teams, every team in the NFC South right now is kind of in fluctuation where everybody has a young quarterback or a bridge quarterback at this point. All of the coaches that are here, for the most part, are either first or second year head coaches with their organizations. So I really feel like if Falcons get Calais Campbell, that's going to be a checkmate type move for us to win the NFC South. Ultra Shadow says he gives them an A minus. Yeah, I can see that. The therapist, he says he'll give him a B for free agency. Yeah, I give him, like I said, I give him a solid B plus. Eric says a B as well. Sonia says a B. Mucha Grande says, so now do y'all believe we will pop on JC A minus? I don't know what he's trying to say there, but most definitely. I say A, he said A minus. Drop the science. Oh, that's Pops in the chat. Shout out to my Pops. Y'all show my Pops some love in the chat. I appreciate you joining tonight as well. D Coleman says A minus. We address everything but interior O-line, and I'm still very concerned about the linebackers in coverage as of today. This is a good point. I love this comment right here. Interior of the offensive line, I'm not really nervous about the interior. I mean, I do think that they're going to bring in or draft a couple guys to play on the offensive line, like to add competition. So they may draft like another guy that can play center or play guard. But I'm not too concerned. To be honest, my main issue for the offensive line, our main concern was whether they're going to be able to bring back both Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry. When they were able to sign both of those guys, I'm really comfortable. I really feel like Wilkerson didn't play bad last year, and I feel like Matt Hennessy, he played really well for us last year as well when they used him at guard. So I could definitely see Matt Hennessy possibly being the starter if we don't sign back Wilkerson. But I really think that Hennessy could be the next starting guard for our team, believe it or not. A lot of people, are kind of overlooking Matt Hennessy. Before he got injured, he was playing really well when they put him in at that guard position. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of peg him as the starter and then possibly draft a guy maybe later on in the draft. I don't see them going offensive line in the first round unless they're looking to replace Jake Matthews, meaning Jake Matthews is kind of getting up there in age. And once his contract is up, maybe this year with that 8th pick, if they really like one of these offensive linemen, they may take one of the offensive linemen that they can play at guard and then maybe move out to left or right tackle once Jake Matthews retires. But at this point, I think we'll be all right on the offensive line. I'm not really concerned about the offensive line. But as far as the linebackers and coverage, I'm still a little bit concerned about the linebackers. I mean, I think Troy Anderson is a really good linebacker, and he can cover and things of that nature. I just want them to bring back Rashaan Evans because I think he's the veteran, that veteran leader that you need on your team. And Dreddy says, "What's good, Drew? Congrats on 2K. I appreciate you joining tonight, and I appreciate you guys helping me get to 2K. We're looking to get to 3K now, so I appreciate you guys, man. Hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, continuing to join. For all 45 people that's watching right now, if you could kindly hit that like button for your boy, it won't cost you nothing to just hit that like button and share this content out, for whether you're an Atlanta Falcons fan or just an NFL fan in general. We want to get this out to as many people as possible, get that algorithm going. But I appreciate you guys joining me every Wednesday night, taking out a little bit of time to talk Atlanta Falcons football with your boy. And Ghost Pepper says B+. If Terry Fontenot signs Campbell, I'll boost that grade to an A. And that's where I'm sitting right now. I'm boosting it up to an A. If we can get Calais Campbell, that's checkmate. I really feel like that'll be a checkmate move for the NFC South because at that point, you have crazy rotation with Grady, Calais Campbell, Eddie Goldman. Then you still have AK on the outside. You still have D'Angelo Malone on the outside. You still have Ogundeji on this team. So you'll be a team that pretty much can go like 8 to 9 deep on your defensive line, which is really good. And then if I'm the Falcons personally, I'm going defensive line in the first round. I mean, if there's any way that Jalen Carter drops to 8 in this draft, I'm taking him. But I've been seeing a lot of people talking about trading up. And if the Falcons trade up in this draft as well, like if they really are in love with a guy, one of these guys on the in this draft, Will Anderson out of Alabama that plays that edge position, like if they're really in love with him, I wouldn't even mind the Falcons trading up to go after a Will Anderson because to me he's a generational type talent. Both him and Jalen Carter are generational type talents to me. So if those guys are really in love with one of those guys, I really feel like that'll be checkmate. Like if you get Will Anderson in this draft or somehow, some way, Jalen Carter drops because of all of the allegations, the things that's been going on with him. If he drops, I'm taking Jalen Carter, no questions asked. And then we still got other guys out there that I really like in this draft, the Tyree Wilsons of the world. I'm really starting to like Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. If he's there at 8 and they really fall in love with him, and I just have a funny feeling that this coaching staff, Ryan Nielsen, every time I watch tape and watch highlights and things of that of Lucas Van Ness, I get Trey Hendrickson vibes, the former New Orleans Saint, now with the Cincinnati Bengals. 6'5", 270 pounds, a guy that's really good at getting after the quarterback, plays with a high motor, good at stopping the run, a guy that can play 3-tech or line up outside, whether he's in the 3-point stance where his hands in the dirt or whether he's in a 2-point stance, kind of standing up as like an outside linebacker. I really think Lucas Van Ness could be a guy that can turn into like a really, really good pass rusher. I know a lot of people are like, 8 is too high to take a Lucas Van Ness, but I really think, a lot of people didn't think that Trey Hendrickson was a guy that was going to be good and he's turned himself into like a Pro Bowl player. Like he's one of the better edge rushers or defensive ends in the league. And when I watch, every time I watch Lucas Van Ness, I get vibes of Trey Hendrickson, and Ryan Nielsen kind of developed Trey Hendrickson. So I think he really like a Lucas Van Ness, and I wouldn't the Falcons went after him. And Mac Town agency he'll give this a like I said, I posted up to an A if we go out and get Calais Campbell. Right now it's a solid B plus. Miss Pamela Johnson says an A minus. Yeah, like I said, I can see A minus, B plus. I agree. And D. Coben says Dahlman gotta go today. Oh man, I think Drew Dahlman's gonna be all right. I know a lot of people at center don't want Drew Dahlman. He was snapping the ball low last year, and he did have a couple of games where he didn't play well. But personally, I think if you give Drew Dahlman time to develop, I really think that he'll be a solid offensive lineman. As I say, chemistry. When it comes to the offensive line, I'm more concerned about chemistry and having scheme fit, players that fit the scheme. And I think Drew Dahlman, because he's a player that they drafted, I really think that the leash is going to be a little bit longer for a player that they drafted. I don't think that they're going to just move off of that draft capital in a Drew Dahlman. I really think Drew Dahlman is a solid center. Like, yeah, he might not be Alex Mack, a mud duck, but he's only last year was like his first, if I'm not mistaken, his first full season starting. So I think you give him at least one more season to prove you wrong. If he plays terrible, like the first half of the season or the first couple games, you still have Matt Hennessy right there that can play center. So I really wouldn't go after any of these top offensive linemen in this draft. I really wouldn't do that. In the first round, I'm looking at defensive line. I'm trying to build the trenches on the defense. And I really think if you get Calais Campbell, you're either looking for an edge guy or Jalen Carter. If Jalen Carter's not there, I'm going with Tyree Wilson, Lucas Van Ness, one of those guys, Miles Murphy, one of those guys. I'll take one of those guys, but I wouldn't go corner. Like I know a lot of people saying Gonzalez out of Oregon. I really feel like you'll be okay if you shore up this defensive line and shore up that front seven. You guys know that I believe in starting with your defensive line and your linebackers. So I believe in starting front to back, building your defense front to back. I'm not all for, going out and trying to necessarily have two great corners. I mean, I wouldn't mind having Christian Gonzalez. I love his game, and he gives me AJ Terrell vibes with the way that he plays, 6'2", 200 pounds long, athletic. But I really feel like at this point, I don't feel like the Falcons necessarily need to take Gonzalez, that top corner, because I really feel like this is a deep draft when it comes to cornerbacks. I believe that they need to go after a defensive lineman. They have to have one of these top defensive linemen in this draft. And let's see. Dreddy says if we can get Campbell, what's the chance of Jalen Carter getting selected by us? And do you think we would trade for Hopkins? To be honest, like I said, I'm going for, even if you get Calais Campbell, if Jalen Carter's on the board, I'm still taking Jalen Carter, because to me, that's the best player available. And I feel like at this point, Calais Campbell's only going to probably play for the team, maybe 1 or 2 years at the max. So you'll have Jalen Carter, who kind of can play the role of both Grady Jarrett and kind of play the role of a Grady Jarrett and a Calais Campbell. So Jalen Carter is a guy that I feel like you draft regardless. If somehow he falls to 8 when everybody was projecting him to be the number 1 pick going to the Bears before they traded down to, gave Carolina that first pick. If Jalen Carter somehow falls, you got to take him. He's a generational type player, because not only can he stop the run, but he's also like that nose that can actually rush the passer. So I'm taking him. You can't teach size. You can't teach that strength. And, those players only come around every so often. So if Jalen Carter's there, hands down, if I'm the Falcons, I'm taking him. And shouts out to Coach Unchained. What's going on? He said, what's good, Jew? I appreciate you joining as well. He's also a part of our AFN crew. So what's going on, man? I appreciate you. And Big Ant says an A minus. We finally got Grady and AJ some help. Most definitely. Yeah, they definitely kept their promise. That's one thing that I can say about Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot. they mean what they say. They talked about going in and being able to get, bring interior pressure, and the guys that they're bringing in, Calais Campbell, Eddie Goldman coming back, Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata, they kept their word at the end of last season when they said in their exit interviews, when they basically talked about being able to, rush the passer and being able to stop the run and, trying to bring pressure up the middle. They have went out and, kept their word, and they're bringing in guys that can definitely impact the defensive line from the center and the interior of our defensive line, to me, which has been a weakness for the last 5 seasons that we've missed the playoffs. And you guys know I'm big on what? The defensive line, stopping the run, running the football. Our identity of this Atlanta Falcons team is physical. We want to impose our will on opposing teams. And the way you impose your will is with that front seven, with your defensive line, and on offense, your offensive line mauling other teams. And that's what we pretty much did last season. We pretty much mauled pretty much every team that we played. Tyler Algier, Caleb McGarry, Chris Lindstrom, those guys, we pretty much mauled every team we played. So I'm glad that they found their identity, and we're seeing that they're bringing in players that's going to be able to do just that. So I really think that they've kept their word on getting Grady Jarrett some help, and I don't believe that they're done. I really think in the draft we're going to see a lot more defensive line presence and also front seven presence. So I expect them to draft a linebacker as well. And Red Swarm says, I agree with the B+. The weight gain played with Caleb McGarry in the midst of all the talk about how he was going to break the bank, and we were foolish not to franchise tag him. Chess, not checkers, bro. Yeah, most definitely. Like, that's why I said that Terry Fontenot, they're definitely playing chess. Like the deal that they got Caleb McGarry on is very team friendly. Us being able to get Jonnu Smith from the Patriots was reasonable because they restructured his contract to kind of fit what we wanted. And pretty much all of these deals that we're seeing are front-loaded deals, meaning it's a lot of money up front or more money up front. But then as these years, as the years go on, these deals kind of tail off where it's not as much as a cap hit, which I think is really good for this Atlanta Falcons team. So I really think that they've done a great job of bringing in guys, at a reasonable cost. And let's see here. What's going on, Devon? He says, what's good, Jew? I appreciate you joining me tonight as well. And let's see here. And Devon says, Calais Campbell could be a nice rotational piece on the defensive line. He'll bring experience and wisdom into the young locker room as well as production. 5.5 sacks is still good for his age. Most definitely. If you can get 5.5 sacks from the interior, like from a defensive lineman, like a nose tackle, that's really good. You expect your edges to be the guys that get you those, the sacks and things of that nature. You expect guys like Calais Campbell pretty much to just collapse the pocket and, disrupt the running game. But Calais Campbell is one of those guys that's 6'8", 300 plus pounds. So it's hard to block a dude that's big, that is that big. You can't teach that size. So 6'8", not only is he going to be able to stop the run, but he's also going to be able to get his hands in the passing lane. And I think that that's something that's been missing from this Falcons team. We seen it last year where when guys didn't get home, they put their hands up to bat the ball. But we've always, for whatever reason, the last couple of years, we've had shorter defensive tackles. So we haven't had guys that could actually tip passes. Like Grady Jarrett's only 6 feet. So he doesn't really have long arms necessarily. I really think having guys like Calais Campbell, that's one thing I like about Tyree Wilson. He's another guy that's like 6'5". Lucas Van Ness is about 6'5". Now, Ogundeji is a guy I think that's 6'5" as well, so he's pretty long. But the guys that we've had over the last couple of years, like the Butcher Anderson that we had signed with Washington, when we had Deidre Sanat, Grady Jarrett, these guys are more stubby, smaller, built kind of like a fire hydrant, shorter, smaller defensive tackles. We really haven't had guys that are tall and long. And that's something that New Orleans has. David Onyemata brings that size. He's like 6'4", long arms. So I really expect this team to disrupt the football in the passing game and get in those passing lanes. Even if when they don't get home, I expect them to still bat passes and things of that nature. And I think that that's something that's kind of been missing from this Falcons team. For whatever reason, we've had smaller defensive tackles. But I think that that's going to change. And we're seeing that change over with this new regime. So that's something that I'm definitely looking forward to. And Dex Diggs, what's going on? He says, Brother Jew, God bless you, bro. Keep me in your prayers as I will you and your family. Most definitely. I definitely keep all of you guys in my prayers, man. And I appreciate you joining me tonight. I hope all is well with you and your family as well. And D. Coleman says Van Ness would get a negative reaction from the fan base, but he will be great here. Most definitely. Like I keep telling all of the fans, if you're not a fan of Lucas Van Ness, or if you're not a fan of certain players, go look at their tape, go look at their highlight reels, go look at like different schemes. Like look at the scheme and go compare them to players that are comparable, like their games are comparable. And to me, if you look at his size, he reminds me of Trey Hendrickson. Every time I see him, I don't know if it's because he wears number 91 like Trey Hendrickson, but every time I see Lucas Van Ness, when his name first came up in mock drafts, I didn't know anything about him. So I was like, who is Lucas Van Ness and why is he shooting up the draft boards and why are they mocking him to the Falcons? But then when I actually went in and took a look at his game, he gives me Trey Hendrickson vibes. Like the dude lines up at 3-tech. The dude can play with his hand in the dirt. The dude is relentless. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't realize for his production, a lot of people have been telling me he only had 7 sacks last year. He wasn't a starter at Iowa. He was a guy that they rotated in and out on their defensive line. So he wasn't a guy that played like a ton of snaps, and he didn't play every snap. He was a guy that they rotated in, almost kind of like a pass rush specialist. So I really think that you can't just look at sack numbers. You kind of have to look at how the player would work on your team or fit in your team, and what type of what type of fit would he be. And to me, just looking at Ryan Nielsen's history, watching the Saints, looking at some of the things that the Saints like to do, to me, he's a player that would have fit on those New Orleans teams when Ryan Nielsen was coaching that defensive line. So that's the reason I kind of fell in love with Lucas Van Ness, because every time I watch him, he gives me those Trey Hendrickson vibes. He's not flashy. He's not the big name as I talked about, which I don't believe this defense, like our defense has a lot of big names on it, but he's a guy that just gets the job done. He's like one of those blue collar type players that's going to bring his hard hat to work. He's one of those guys that's, he's not going to, be one of the guys that is one of those names, but he's going to make plays. He's not a big name, but he's going to make plays for you. So you guys definitely go check him out and, tell me what you think. But I definitely think Lucas Van Ness is a guy that I could definitely see the Falcons going after, because, again, we're looking for guys that fit scheme. We're not just looking for guys that are necessarily freak athletes. They're looking for guys that's going to be able to do certain things. And I think Lucas Van Ness is a guy who can play the run on his way to the quarterback. And that's something that I think this Falcons team still needs. And shout out to Nathan Floyd. I don't know if I said what's up to Nathan Floyd tonight, but what's going on, man? I like this question. He says, what about Nolan Smith? So Nolan Smith has been one of those guys. Of course, he played at Georgia. So he's a Georgia Bulldog, one of the fan favorites for the Atlanta Falcons. I like Nolan Smith's game. I do have some concerns, because to me, he's mainly a speed rush type guy, similar to like a Vic Beasley. I don't know necessarily if the Falcons will take him at 8, but he had a really good combine. But if you go look at his tape, the thing that makes me nervous about him is his size. That's the main thing that makes me nervous about him. Now, he could be a player that's more like a Hassan Reddick. And Hassan Reddick, if you go look at his stature, I think he's only like 6 feet, 6'1", and he had, I think, like 17 or 18 sacks last year for the Eagles. So Nolan Smith is a guy that's relentless, fast off the edge, and I could see the Falcons drafting him because he could be a compliment to the guys that we brought in. Like, we're beefing up the defensive line. If we get Calais Campbell, you got Eddie Goldman, you got Grady Jarrett. I wouldn't mind having a speedster coming off the edge like a Nolan Smith on certain situations like 3rd and long and stuff like that. Where I get nervous about a Nolan Smith is, can he play the run? That's what makes me nervous about a Nolan Smith. Like, is he a guy that you can play on 1st and 2nd down and trust that he's going to set the edge? Now, size just because he's small doesn't mean that he's not going to be able to play, because the Dwight Freeney, if you go look at his size, he wasn't a big guy. And it's been guys that have been smallish defensive linemen or outside linebackers that's played well in the NFL. If you go look at James Harrison from the Steelers, he was another guy that was undersized but played really well off the edge. Elvis Dumerville was another guy with the Broncos that was smaller, played with the Ravens and played with the Broncos that was really good coming off the edge. So I like Nolan Smith as well. I don't know if I would take him over a Tyree Wilson or over some of these guys like a Lucas Van Ness, because I think that Nielsen and these guys are going to look for a bigger type guy. To me, Nolan Smith is similar to guys that we already have. Like if you look at Arnold Ebiketie, he's not the biggest guy either. And he's kind of a guy that's quick off the edge and likes to use spin moves and speed rush. I think they're going to go for more of a defensive end type guy, a bigger guy, over one of the guys that are like a speed guy off the edge. If you look at the guy that we brought in from the Saints, I can't think of his name right now, but the kid that we brought from the Saints, the outside linebacker, he's another guy that's similar to like a Nolan Smith type. Like he's a guy that's going to rush off the edge, but he's not the biggest type guy. But one thing I do like about Nolan Smith is he does give you versatility as far as, because he's so fast, he actually can drop in the coverage. Like he can drop in the flats. He's a guy that you can possibly use with as like an off ball type like linebacker where he's knifing through, gaps and things of that nature and bringing pressure. And he's also a guy that can possibly spy on the quarterback. Like it's a lot of mobile quarterbacks in the NFL right now. So Nolan Smith could be more like a specialty player. I don't see him as an every down player. So I'm really wondering if they're going to value him that high at 8. If the Falcons trade back, I could see them drafting a Nolan Smith, but I don't know if they'll take a Nolan Smith at 8 just because of his size. But just because he's small doesn't mean that he can't fit in the league or that he can't play the run. Because like I said, I named guys in the past that have done it at a high level, and it's guys in the league that are still doing it. But shouts out to the for another super chat. He says, do you think Onyemata could be switched to defensive end? Most definitely. Most definitely. Like, I think the guys that we have, all of these guys can play somewhat everywhere. And this is what I kind of been talking about with versatility. And I appreciate the super chat. Grim Bread Monk. I think that's how you say it, a Game Bread Monk. I shouts out to you for the $2 super chat. I definitely think Onyemata is a guy you can move around. Like on this defensive line, what I expect them to do is like on first and second down in the base sets, I expect them to have like Taquan Graham possibly on the edge. Last year we seen Grady Jarrett sometimes on the edge. Preferably, I would prefer if you're going to play a bigger base front, I'm thinking you'll have Lorenzo Carter on one edge. You'll have David Onyemata probably at the nose position in the base set, Grady Jarrett at the 3 tech, and then on the other side, you'll probably have Ogundeji unless they draft the guy. If they draft like a Tyree Wilson, I think he'll be the other guy off the other edge. But then like on third down situations and then sub packages, meaning in nickel situations where you got more corners on the field, when they're trying to rush the passer, in those situations, that's why I think you're going to see AK on the edge, D'Angelo Malone on the edge, the kid that they brought over, Caden Ellis, the linebacker from the Saints that we brought over. You could possibly see him on the edge in those sub packages. Like when it's third and long, I expect to see those smaller guys off the edge. In base sets, that's when you can possibly see like an Onyemata on it as a defensive end. I don't think you'll see him as a defensive end like on third and long situations, but in those base situations, the Saints use Onyemata sometimes as like a defensive end. Mainly he was used as their nose tackle, but I think he has the ability in the bend where you can play him as like a defensive end in those base sets. And I do appreciate, again, like I said, that super chat. And shouts out to my bro, VA in the chat. He says, real number one, Jew Talk Sports. Man, I appreciate you joining me tonight as well. That's my brother in the chat, my baby bro. Shout out to you, man. I appreciate that. I hope all is going well with you this evening as well. And I think I missed a couple of your guys' questions, so I'm going to scroll back up as well. And let's see. All right. So YMFO Jamal 05 says, rise up, Jew. What's the word, Dirty Bird? Congrats on 2K, bro. Keep pushing. Most definitely. Yeah, we're going to keep grinding. We grinding for 3K now, but I appreciate you guys for y'all continually hitting that subscribe button, hitting the like button, and definitely sharing out my content. Like we shoot for 3K and beyond. We're trying to get this channel as big as possible. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys for your for the support. I appreciate my bros, the heavy hitters, AFN, everybody that helped this channel grow. Man, shouts out to each and every one of you guys. And y'all definitely go show them some love as well. My boy 6Man K is on his way to 2,000 subscribers as well. So y'all help him get to 2K. And y'all help Mike. I believe he's at 8K. He's working on getting to 9K and 10K. So shouts out to each and every one of the Atlanta Falcons Atlanta Falcons content creators. I appreciate you guys helping us continue to keep grinding and pushing for that next milestone. And my pop says, when do you think the Falcons will be a Super Bowl team? Oh, he hitting hard. He coming to ask the hard questions. I think, really, to be honest, this Falcons team, if we get Calais Campbell, if we get a Tyree Wilson or one of these top edge rushers, if we get a Will Anderson, like we trade up, this Falcons team could be a dark horse team to make a deep playoff run. I won't say Super Bowl this year, but if this Falcons team, if this year, if they get one of those, those edges, one of the best edges in the draft, or one of these really good pass rushers, and we're able to land Calais Campbell, I think this Falcons team could definitely win the division. And then if they win the division, depending on what our, where we are in far as playoff rankings, like if we're the 1 seed or 2 seed, this Falcons team could surprise a lot of people. Like you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. If you're the 1 seed, you get that first bye, you're in the divisional round, and then you in the NFC Championship game. So I wouldn't put it past this Falcons team. If you guys go back to 2016, we had a lot of rookies on that team. Deion Jones, Devondre Campbell, Keanu Neal. We had a lot of young players on that team, and nobody expected the Falcons to be in the Super Bowl in 2016. And they came out and shocked a lot of people. So I wouldn't be surprised if this Falcons team, I won't say Super Bowl this year, but if you win your division and you get into the playoffs in one game elimination situations, crazier things have happened. So I think that the Falcons have enough talent. I think we may need to add a little bit more talent on the offensive side of the ball, as far as maybe another pass catcher and maybe another running back. But I really feel like this Falcons team, if Desmond Ridder develops the way that I think he will this year, he could have a Jalen Hurts type season. Don't be surprised if Desmond Ridder has a really good season. A lot of people are sleeping on Desmond Ridder, but I think Desmond Ridder could be like a Jalen Hurts type story because he's a gym rat. Like this dude is one of those guys that believes in himself, is a constant worker, a professional. And he talked about when he was drafted by the Falcons that he's not leaving Atlanta until he gets a Super Bowl. So you guys know I believe in speaking things into existence, with being a Christian. So I definitely think that Desmond Ridder is one of those guys that definitely has the ability to possibly lead this Falcons team to the promised land. So don't be surprised if this Falcons team, I definitely expect this Falcons team to make the playoffs possibly. But once you get in the playoffs, anything is possible. And shouts out to my boy Blackberry. Y'all definitely check him out. He be doing his thing on Fridays with the Rex Pit. So shouts out to my boy over there at AFN. That's one of my partners as well. He says, I'm looking out for how you come. Well, let's see. I'm looking out for how you come with that cap game this season, Jew. Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I always keep them hats on deck, man. I love the Falcons caps, and the new draft hats look pretty tough. So I might definitely have to get one of those draft hats, man. I like how they had a name. I think it's like it'll have like Atlanta or Falcons on it and then the emblem. So I definitely got to have the hats on deck. You guys know I love the hats, and you guys know I love jerseys. So hopefully we can bring Calais Campbell, or hopefully we can get one of these guys that I really like in the draft. Last year I got my Drake London jersey around Christmas time. You got the Kyle Pitts jersey the year before. So some reason every year since we had this new regime, I end up getting one of these rookies jerseys. So we'll see who we get this year. I'm speaking into existence. It's either going to be Tyree Wilson, Jalen Carter. I definitely may add one of those guys jerseys on deck. But I really want me a Grady Jarrett jersey. I'm trying to find the stitch joint. So if you guys let me know. I might have to go ahead and get me a Grady Jarrett jersey because it's been long overdue. But most definitely, I'm definitely gonna keep the hat game coming for you. So I appreciate the $10 super chat as always. And y'all definitely go check them out tomorrow night. The AFN crew, they do their things on Thursday nights. So y'all definitely check them out. And definitely check out the Rex Pit. We be giving you guys the stats, the facts, and the truth. So y'all definitely tune in. And let's see, Champagne Confessions. Oh, that's Miss Maggie. Shouts out to Miss Maggie. That's boss lady right there. Shouts out to Miss Maggie over there at AFN. I appreciate you tuning in tonight as well. And let's see here. And Michael says, Jew, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining tonight as well. Let's see. Red Swarm says, Jew Al Breer is reporting that DeAndre Hopkins isn't a consideration for the Patriots any longer. Hopefully that's good news for the Falcons. That'll be another checkmate type move. Like I'm telling you guys, 2 splash moves that nobody saw coming and I didn't even see coming is the DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not saying that this is going to get done, but if you somehow can get DeAndre Hopkins on this team with Drake London at 6'5", DeAndre Hopkins is a bona fide number one, wide receiver. So now you really have a 1A and 1B with him and Drake London. You got Jonnu Smith as a pass catcher. You got Kyle Pitts. That'll be a checkmate type move. You get DeAndre Hopkins, now you're knocking on the door. You're looking at a deep playoff run. You look at you seriously are trying to vie for a Super Bowl. You're trying to be one of those teams that is going to be one of those teams that could be a contender for the Super Bowl. But I think DeAndre Hopkins takes this team to the next level. Like I'm looking at this Falcons team as they're really solid on offense right now, with the wide receiving core that we have and the pass catchers we have. But if you get DeAndre Hopkins, then you get into one of the better wide receiving cores in the league or pass catching teams in the league because we got guys like Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith, London, Matt Collins. Like at that point, you're really doing something if you go after DeAndre Hopkins. And it says, let's see, speaking into existence, Jew, we getting D-Hop. Hey, most definitely. Hey, I love it, man. If we could get D-Hop on this team, I'm telling y'all, we calling checkmate on the NFC South. If we can get DeAndre Hopkins on this team with the way that Desmond Ridder spread the ball around and the way that he's not afraid to put the ball up in the air, we know what Marcus Mariota, he was overshooting guys. He was afraid to put the ball in certain positions. Like he was looking for guys to be wide open. DeAndre Hopkins is a type of player like a Drake London where he doesn't have to be open. You can throw him you can throw the ball anywhere in D-Hop's vicinity. Normally he's gonna come down with the ball 9 times out of 10. So it's like a 90% chance if you throw the ball D-Hop's way, 90% of the time he's gonna catch it. The other 5% of the time it probably will be batted. The other 5% is gonna be incomplete. But you don't see many interceptions being thrown when the ball is being thrown towards DeAndre Hopkins. If you go look at DeAndre Hopkins over his career, like when he started with the Houston Texans, he really never had any quality quarterbacks until he got Deshaun Watson. And that was later on in his career with the Houston Texans. But like his first 4 or 5 years, he didn't have, any quality quarterbacks throwing him the ball. They basically had a quarterback carousel, and he was putting up 1,000 yards pretty much every single year religiously. So D-Hop, hey, I'll speak it into existence. If we can get, like I said, if we get D-Hop, that's checkmate in a game of chess. D-Hop and Calais Campbell, those would be checkmate type moves. Let's see here. And Tony Wright, what's going on, man? I don't think I said what's up to you tonight, man. I appreciate you joining tonight. He says, looking at film, David Onyemata is very quick for his size, and he gets to the quarterback in a hurry when he gets there. Most definitely, David Onyemata is, like I said, he's one of those guys that because he played in New Orleans, which is a smaller market, just like Atlanta, he didn't get a lot of, notoriety because that Saints defense, everybody always talks about Cam Jordan. But David Onyemata, if you go look at, his stats and what he did when he was with the Saints, he was one of the reasons why the Saints didn't give up a 100-yard rushing game I think it was like almost 2 years where they didn't give up a 100-yard rusher. They went like a full season with no team being able to rush for 100 yards against them. I think it was like a year, almost 2 years where they didn't give up 100 yards rushing. So that goes to David Onyemata, those boys, those big boys that had inside. For a long time, they had Shelvin Rankins, Shy Tuttle, all those big boys they had over there in New Orleans. David Onyemata was at the top of the list as far as their defensive tackles and their interior pressure. David Onyemata was the guy that was bringing that interior pressure on their team. So Terry Fontenot targeted David Onyemata for that reason. He was one of the guys that scouted David Onyemata to the Saints, and that's the reason why David Onyemata stated that he signed with the Falcons, is because him and Terry Fontenot have a really good relationship, and him and Ryan Nielsen have a good, really good relationship. Let's see. And let me scroll down some. I appreciate you guys. And I see you guys were saying Caden Ellis. Yeah, I keep forgetting his name for some reason. Caden Ellis. Yeah, I really like his game a lot. Him coming over. The main thing with Caden Ellis is he got to stay healthy, but he definitely is a guy that I think can be another guy off the edge. I think they're going to use him kind of like that Swiss Army knife type player, where not only can he play that inside linebacker position, but he's also like technically a pass rusher. And Wallace Smith says, "What's good, Jew? I don't think we will go with the big defensive end. I really think we do. Yeah, I think we're going to go with a bigger defensive end. I really think we will. Like, I don't think they're going to go after like a Nolan Smith. I really feel like that's what the Falcons, that's kind of been the trend of what the Falcons have did. When we had Dan Quinn, he wanted smaller. Well, I don't know if it was Dan Quinn or whether it was Thomas Dimitroff, but whoever it was between those two, they wanted smaller, faster guys off the edge. To me, Vic Beasley was a solid player, to be honest. I just didn't like how Dan Quinn changed what he had Vic Beasley doing. The one season when he had Vic Beasley basically playing like a linebacker, dropping him in the coverage and stuff like that, when he was best at getting after the passer, I really didn't like how he used Vic Beasley in certain situations. I feel like in 2016, when he used Vic Beasley mainly as a pass rusher, like in certain situations, I really feel like Vic Beasley was a situational, like outside linebacker. He really wasn't a defensive end, and that's really kind of what wrecked Vic Beasley when he was here in Atlanta. Like, he wasn't a 3-down lineman type player. He was more of a third and long, situational pass rusher, and Dan Quinn kind of used him out of position. So I really think that's really what held Vic Beasley's game back. I really think that Vic Beasley, we seen in 2016 when he led the league in sacks, that he had it in him. It's just he had to be used in the correct way. Let's see. And there it is. Pop says 2023 year of destiny. Most definitely. Yeah, hey, look, maybe this is the Falcons' year. Hopefully this is our year where we can get to the promised land. I mean, if we win the Super Bowl, that's going to shut everybody up with all that Desmond Ridder hate. If we win a Super Bowl and he wins it in his first year starting, that would be crazy. He would do what Jalen Hurts tried to do last year. But I just think it's funny that a lot of people sleep on Desmond Ridder when we just seen it last year. Like, Jalen Hurts prior to last season, he was Desmond Ridder. Like, if you look at Jalen Hurts the season before last, 2 years ago, he literally did pretty much the same thing that Desmond Ridder did. They entered him in like towards the end of the season. He took over for Carson Wentz. Then next thing you know, this last season, they built the team around him, built a nice defense around him, added AJ Brown, added weapons around him, gave him an offensive line that will protect him, gave him running backs like Miles Sanders and those guys, and you've seen the best out of Jalen Hurts. And I feel like Desmond Ridder is a similar type player. I don't think he's as strong as a Jalen Hurts, because they say that Jalen Hurts is a guy that's like one of the strongest guys in the weight room on their team. I don't think Desmond Ridder is that type of guy, but I do think that as far as his mentality, like him being a leader, I think that that's something that the intangibles, I definitely think it's something that he brings to the table. Desmond Ridder is similar to Jalen Hurts when it comes to the intangibles, meaning the players love to play with him. I feel like Desmond Ridder, since he's came in, has been, one of the ultimate professional type players. He carried himself like a QB1, even when he was the backup for Marcus Mariota. And since he stepped foot in Flowery Branch, they were talking about him like in rookie mini camps. Like, this dude is a leader. This dude, holds everybody accountable. And I definitely think that you can't teach those intangibles. Now, his ability to see the field and throw the ball and things of that nature, we seen last year him make some big time throws. The throw he made against the Cardinals on the last drive of the game, where he basically, threw the ball in a tight window to Pruitt to basically get the first down, to lead us down the field to win the game for that game-winning field goal, was a clutch play. We seen plays where he was feeding Drake London, like they looked like they were on one accord as far as throwing the ball. And one thing that I like about Desmond Ridder is he's a guy that understands how to throw guys open. Like, he understands and he has that feel. As a quarterback, you got to have a feel to know and be able to see windows. And I think that that's something that he does much better than a guy like Marcus Mariota. Is he doesn't wait for guys to get open. He doesn't wait to see guys running wide open. He throws guys open. And in the NFL, those windows are really tight. So you have to be able to see plays before they happen. And I think that that's something that Desmond Ridder, that's something you really can't teach to a quarterback. You either have the feel or you don't have the feel. And I think that's something that Desmond Ridder does really well. And I really think if he goes and works on this game, which I'm sure because he's a gym rat type player, I'm pretty sure right now he's out somewhere with a professional quarterbacks coach throwing a football and getting ready for the season. So I really think that that Desmond Ridder is going to have a really good year and surprise a lot of people. And shouts out to Miss B in the chat. I appreciate you joining me tonight as well. And let's see here. And Jamaria says, hit that thumbs up button. Don't treat Jew 2K like a side chick. Oh, that's funny. I appreciate that. Yeah, y'all definitely hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button for your boy, man. I don't know how many likes we got on. Look, I'm going to have to tell my wife in the back, she the producer, do a like check for your boy. Look, we don't want to hold the show hostage, but definitely hit that like button for your boy. Let's see here. And Brian Peoples, what's going on, man? He says D-Hop is willing to restructure his contract. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins want to win, man. I really think DeAndre Hopkins, because he played with the Houston Texans for all of those years, and they really, weren't contenders. He played with a lot of bad quarterbacks, and, they didn't really have a lot of good teams. I really think DeAndre Hopkins really don't care about the money so much anymore. I think he really wants to win. Like, he's made a lot of money in his career. He's been a number one wide receiver pretty much since he stepped foot in the NFL. And being that he's saying he's willing to restructure his deal to whatever team signs him, I definitely would see if we can get DeAndre Hopkins, because he just wants to win. And I really feel like he could be that AJ Brown for the Eagles, how he was for Jalen Hurts. He could be that for our team here in Atlanta. Like, he could be that missing piece that we need. And at that point, Drake London becomes your number 2. Which really Drake London's the number 1. So if you can bring in a D-Hop, somebody who you bring in the locker room who's also a leader, a guy that can help Drake London because he's a veteran, been around the block a couple times. Like, I definitely think D'Angelo. I definitely think that D-Hop will be a guy that the Falcons should definitely go after. I really feel like he wants to win. Tony Wright says, once the Jets release Corey Davis, that'll be the wide receiver that we need as our number 2 wide receiver. I like Corey Davis. I mean, to me, he's similar to a Mac Hollins. So, I mean, if they release him, I wouldn't mind, bringing him in, kicking the tires to see. I don't think it'll take a lot of money to sign him. So I definitely think that he wouldn't be a bad signing. I would prefer D-Hop over Corey Davis if you can get him, but Corey Davis fits the mold because he's a big physical wide receiver. So, and I believe he played with Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. So he's familiar with Arthur Smith's scheme. And we're going to take a few more questions and then we're going to get off here. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. We got 69 in the chat. So definitely y'all hit that like, hit that subscribe button for your boy. He says, Jude, the new Stephen A. Smith. Hey, I'm trying, man. I'm making my way, most definitely. Y'all definitely hit that like and hit that subscribe button for your boy. And let's see here. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll down some. We got a lot of comments in the chat, and this goes back to what I was just saying. Juan, he says Ridder's going to surprise everyone this year. Like most definitely. I don't know why everybody's hating on Desmond Ridder. I don't know what the issue is. I really feel like people are just afraid of the unknown. Like give the guy a chance. We don't know what he can do. Nobody knew what Jalen Hurts can do until they actually put a team around him, assembled a real team and put talent around him. And I really feel like the Falcons are going about it the correct way. What's the best friend to a young quarterback or any quarterback in a game of football? A solid running game and a good defense. That's what travels. If you have a great defense and you have a really good defense and a really good running game and a good offensive line, and put weapons around a young quarterback, that's a quarterback's best friend is a great running game and a great defense, because you're not going to be on long fields. You're going to get turnovers if you have a great defense. You're going to put your offense on short fields. He's not going to have to march 70 and 80 yards every time down the field. You're going to get multiple opportunities and multiple cracks if your defense is getting turnovers. So I really don't understand why the media and why a lot of the Falcons fans don't like Desmond Ridder, because to me, from what I seen last year, just in the last quarter of the season that he played, I saw some really, really good things. Like I like what I seen out of him. Just him building. Every single game he got better. And to be honest, he played pretty well in every single game. Like a lot of the games that we lost, I wouldn't put it on Desmond Ridder's shoulders. It really was like a team type deal. That game against the Saints when we were driving, he put the ball on the money on fourth down. Drake London fumbled. That could have been easily a game-winning drive. His first official start, which was in New Orleans, which is one of the hardest places to play, against the Baltimore. The game was close. Like pretty much every single game that we played was either a close game or we won the game. We beat the Bucs the last game of the season, and we beat the Cardinals. So I mean, he played really well. And my pop says the Falcons have to come out the gate punching every team in the mouth. They have to set a precedence this year. It's a must, most definitely. And that's what this Falcons team, their identity, like the identity of this Atlanta Falcons regime under Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, is physical. They say they want smart and physical players. And we're seeing that. If you bring in a David Onyemata, physical guy, Eddie Goldman coming back, physical, Calais Campbell, physical type player. Last year they drafted Tyler Algier. You got Maulers up front. You re-signed Lindstrom and McGarry. Like the guys that they're bringing in are guys that are physical. Mac Hollins is a extremely physical guy. Jonnu Smith, physical. Like all the guys that we're seeing that this team are bringing in are scheme fits. Like I said, they're not big name guys, but they're guys that fit this type of scheme, which is a blue collar type scheme. And let's see here. And Tony Wright says, "Hey Jew, I've stated on several podcasts that once Calais Campbell enters the facility at Flowery Branch, they should lock all the doors and keep them locked until he signs with the Falcons." Yeah, I wouldn't force the man to stay, but I would definitely be asking him what do you want? What do you want? What can we give you? How can we make this a conducive, atmosphere for you to be here? Because I really think you bring in a Calais Campbell. He's a guy that's played in the Super Bowl. He's a guy that has won a lot of games. He's played a lot of football, because I believe he's been in the league over a decade at this point. I believe he came in the league at like 2008 or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's a guy that's played a lot of football. So I definitely think you get Calais Campbell, you definitely have to roll out the red carpet, and you got to do everything in your power to pay Calais Campbell. And Blackbird says, whatever we do first, I just make sure the next thing we do is get Jack Campbell. Just draft Jack. Hey, I like Jack Campbell a lot. I went and actually watched tape on him. I believe Brian Peoples was maybe like 2 weeks ago mentioned Jack Campbell's name. And for whatever reason, I just like Iowa players in the draft. Iowa just the players that Iowa, most of the time, the players that play at Iowa, they're like a blue collar type team. And Jack Campbell is a guy that's similar. They compared him to like a Brian Urlacher. And when I went and watched tape, he's like 6'5", 250 pounds, I believe, or something like that. I think he's like around 245, something like that. But he's a guy that's a really good middle linebacker. Like, he has great instincts. The thing that scares me about Jack Campbell is his coverage ability. But other than that, I mean, I like him a lot. He plays on the team with Lucas Van Ness, so that would be crazy if they get both of them. That would be really crazy. But I definitely think that Jack Campbell is a guy that's a really good middle linebacker. I get Urlacher type vibes from him because of his innate ability to see plays before they happen. A linebacker is really similar to a quarterback on the defense. You have to have the ability to see plays and break down what's happening before it happens. And I think that's something that Jack Campbell has. He's not the fastest guy, sideline to sideline, but one thing that I think he has an innate ability to do is see plays before they happen, similar to like a Luke Kuechly, Brian Urlacher, where you don't have to be the fastest guy if you know where the ball is going and you have those instincts where you're not thinking out there a whole lot. You just making plays. Like, he has that innate ability to understand, and see plays before they happen. So I think Jack Campbell definitely would be a guy that would fit in this scheme, because if you go back and just look at Ryan Nielsen and the Saints have linebackers that like to go downhill, play downhill. They don't believe in, like, when we had Deion Jones, he was more of a guy that flowed sideline to sideline. He was one of those quick, twitchy linebackers. If you look at the Saints, a lot of their linebackers are guys that like Demario Davis, Pete Warner. Those guys are downhill linebackers. They're not guys that really like to play out in space. They like to play in a phone booth. And Jack Campbell is a phone booth type of guy. So I definitely think that he could be a guy that'll fit this Atlanta Falcons scheme. Let's see. Now I'll take like maybe two more questions. I'm gonna try to scroll down and see if I can answer somebody's question that I haven't answered tonight. Let's see here. All right, so shouts out to Paul Durant. He says, I haven't been this excited about the Falcons in 4 or 5 years. We finally got the talent with good coaching. Most definitely. Like, we were in cap hell. Like, let's just be real. We didn't have the money really to do anything. But I think that this team did a good job. This organization and this regime did a good job of using what we had. Like, the last 2 seasons, even though we didn't really have any money and we basically were playing with rookies and playing with 1 and 2 year, 1 and 2 2-year deal guys, we really didn't have any guy we can pay top dollar to. They did a good job of making it like competitive. Pretty much every game we watched, it really wasn't like last year or the year before when Arthur Smith was here that we weren't in close games. Like, it was a slaughterhouse. We played well and we pretty much was in playoff contention to the very end, like into December, both seasons. So for you to go 7-10 and 7-10 with no weapons is what makes me excited, because I'm like, now you actually have money. You can go out and bring in better talent and add depth to this team. So it's no reason why this Falcons team shouldn't win at least 10 games this year. Like, to me, that's the bar being low to me. Like, this team should win 10 games. This team should go at least 10-7. And that's without me even seeing the draft. This team should easily go 10-7. You should be able to win 3 more games and be at least contending for a wild card spot this season, based off of the talent that you brought in, not even counting a Calais Campbell. Even if we don't sign Calais Campbell, I still say the bar should be set at 10 wins. This team should be able to win. Out of a 17-game schedule, this team should be able to go at least 10-7. That's my bar for this team. It's 10-7. That's the bare minimum. You should win 10 games. B says everybody got a right to their opinions. Just because some are more optimistic about Ritter than others don't make them wrong or hate on him. Folks kill me. That's dumb-ish. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I definitely agree with that. But I feel like just let's see. We always say wait and see, and that's what I say. Wait and see. I really believe in Desmond Ritter. If you don't believe in him, everybody has the right to their own opinion. But personally, I think that Desmond Ritter would definitely be a guy. To me, from what I seen just last year, and then from what I seen in his college tape, and like he played, I believe, 3 or 4 seasons at Cincinnati and pretty much took them to a college football playoff when Cincinnati is not really known for being a great football program. They're a decent program, but we know they don't get the top recruits and things of that nature they don't get those 5-star recruits majority of the time. Those players play in the SEC most of the time. The Alabamas, the Clemsons, usually those are the teams that get, the Ohio States of the world. Those are the teams that usually have those 5-star recruits. So for Desmond Ritter to be a winner, like if you go look at his college career, he was a winner in college. He was one of those guys that has played a lot of football in his college career, and he's looked really well last year. He played really well in the preseason, and he played really well in those last 4 games. So that's the reason why I'm optimistic about Desmond Ritter. For the ones that are not optimistic and think that he's not going to be a good quarterback, I guess the proof is going to be in the pudding. Like he going to have to show us, he going to have to prove us wrong. A lot of people didn't believe in Jalen Hurts either. And like I said, I don't believe that everybody that's not optimistic is a hater. But I do think that Desmond Ritter does have a lot of haters here in Atlanta, especially because we didn't go after Lamar Jackson. I think a lot of people are just hating on him because they don't, they haven't seen it. That's what your faith is for. They haven't seen it, so they don't have no faith in this kid. They don't believe that he can do anything. But I feel like give him a chance. Like until we see him actually fail, don't just assume that the guy's gonna fail. Personally, I think if they build around him, which I think Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot are doing the right thing about setting the infrastructure and building a team to make his job easier, this year should show us if Desmond Ritter is the guy moving forward. The next 2 years, if he starts the next 2 seasons, that should give us enough body of work for us to know if Desmond Ritter should be the guy moving forward, meaning going into that next contract. I think if he plays the next 2 seasons, the next 2 seasons, the full seasons, I think within the next 2 seasons, you'll know if Desmond Ritter's the guy. But I think this year he's going to, a lot of the doubters, I think, are going to get silenced after this season. And that's the same thing with Jalen Hurts. He silenced a lot of the haters. And Mutual Grind says, "Oh yeah, Jew, we really going to flip the script, 7-10 to 10-7." Yeah, I mean that's what my bar is set. Like you got to win 10 games this season. You got to make the playoffs. Like there's no excuse. Like you were right there knocking on the door the last 2 years with no talent, or not as much talent. So if you got all of this talent, and then the NFC South right now is pretty much a mess. Like there's no team really out there in the NFC South that's a juggernaut. Like the last couple of years, the Bucks built their team the first couple of years where they were loaded. Like they had AB, Gronk, and then they already had a solid defense. They were like the prohibited favorites the last couple of years to win the South. But this year, like there's no reason why the Falcons shouldn't win the South, or there's no reason why the Falcons shouldn't make the playoffs. Like if you look at this team, 10-7 is where my bar is set. Like if you got to win 10 games this season, period. There's no excuse. Like with all of the talent that you've acquired, I don't see a reason why this team doesn't go at least 10-7 or better. 10-7. 10-7 is the bare minimum. And Wallace Smith says, "Do you think we'll draft the offensive lineman in this draft?" I definitely think the Falcons are going to take an offensive lineman because I believe in the trenches. You have to add depth. A position always draft, to me personally, running back, defensive line, offensive line. You draft that yearly. Running backs, you're always going to need running backs. You're always going to need guys in the trenches, even for depth purposes, even if they're not starting, even if you're drafting them later in the draft. You always have to be consistently developing offensive linemen. You always have to be consistently developing defensive linemen. And to me, you always have to draft running backs because the shelf life on those type of players are not long. But I definitely think the Falcons are going to take an offensive lineman in this draft. I don't know in what round, but I definitely expect them to draft guys, because you have guys that are getting older. Like Jake Matthews is getting up there in age at this point. So at some point, he's going to retire. At some point, he's going to start slowing down. You're going to have a guy that can come right in. Once he retires, you want to have a guy that can roll right into a lot of times what teams do, and that's what I kind of mentioned earlier in the show, is they'll go out and take a guy that's like a left tackle or right tackle. They'll let them play like guard or play another position if they want them to be a starter right away, and then they kind of wait for that other player to phase out, and then they just plug them right into the the left tackle or right tackle position. So the Falcons doing that as well. But we'll see where they go, where they go in the draft. But I definitely think at some point you're going to draft the offensive lineman. So every year, my philosophy is you draft running backs, you draft offensive linemen, you draft defensive linemen yearly. You're never going to have enough of those type of positions. And even corners, to be honest, with the league the way that it is, most teams, depending on how many picks you have, that's another position that you always have to look for depth as well as the secondary. As far as the cornerback position is another position I think you kind of have to draft yearly as well. But the main ones that I focus on, running back, defensive line, offensive line, that's a must. Every year you got to draft that because guys fade, you phase guys out after a while. And you never know when somebody's going to go down. And to me, with an offensive line, we learned when Matt Ryan was here his last couple years, no matter how great you are on the outside, if you can't protect your quarterback, if you don't have a solid offensive line, you're not going to be able to run the ball. You're not going to be able to pass the ball because you're not going to be able to protect the quarterback, and you're not going to be able to open up running lanes. If you look at the teams that are successful continuously, the Eagles, they always draft in the O-line and defensive line. They always have a good offensive line and a good defensive line. If you look at the Steelers, for the most part, they always have a good defensive line and a good offensive line. If you look at the Ravens, they always are good in the trenches. The teams that are always good in the trenches are teams that consistently win. If you look at the teams that are consistently winning over the last couple decades or since the NFL has been in existence, it's the teams that, respect and they hold the trenches in high regard. And that's why I say the Falcons this year, they're doing the right thing with build your trenches first. It starts up front. Build the trenches. Forget getting you can get a quarterback, you can get a wide receiver, you can get running backs, you can get skill position players anytime. You have to build the trenches. The trenches is basically the fundamentals. That's the foundation of your team. So you have to have a solid offensive line and defensive line to even contend. If you don't have a good offensive line and defensive line, you're not going to be able to win a Super Bowl without it. But with that being said, you guys let me definitely hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you guys joining me this evening. I'm going to give you guys your night back. I kind of ran over a little bit tonight, so I apologize to you guys, but it was a lot of questions in the chat. But I appreciate you guys joining each and every Wednesday for What's the Word Wednesdays. Shouts out to everybody that joined me tonight. Definitely tune in tomorrow for AFN. They'll be doing their thing. The Rex pick. Y'all definitely go and join them tomorrow night. Shouts out to my boys, the heavy hitters. Y'all definitely go show Mad Mike some love. He went live earlier. Y'all go show him some love. Hit that like and subscribe button. Definitely go over to my boy 6Man K Styles, 6MK. Definitely hit that like and subscribe button is on his channel as well. He's on the road to 2K. Y'all already helped your boy get to 2K. So y'all go over there and show 6Man some love. They do live shows pretty much almost every night, Monday, Tuesday. I'm doing my show on Wednesday. Sometimes they do a show on Friday nights. So y'all definitely go show 6Man some love, man. He gives y'all those live shows, and we know that takes a lot of time. So y'all definitely go show him some love by hitting that like and subscribe button. But with that being said, this been your boy Jew. I'll holler at you guys in the next video, the next live show next week. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up, be blessed. Peace.